AAA, acting, alcohol, and anxiety. Those are three things that have always gone hand in hand in my life. Acting is something I've always been interested in. From the time I was in sixth grade, I wrote an autobiography, and it was all about how I was going to be in a handful of sitcoms and several movies. I was going to win awards for everything. I don't even think I knew what the awards were I was going to win, but I was going to win them all. And then I, alcohol, that was just something I had a relationship with because when it was a weird relationship, having grown up with the mother I did, she was kind of acted as the poster person for why you don't become an absolute drunk. But I liked alcohol. I really enjoyed it, specifically beer and wine, more specifically Bud Light and red wine. And it was a way to alleviate the anxiety. And I grew up with a lot of anxiety. I've always had anxiety. But back in the day, or when I was younger, it wasn't really known as anxiety. We knew it as being nervous. And I was always nervous because I was always in trouble. I was the go-to person who was blamed for everything. When I was little, all fingers pointed at me. In my family, all fingers pointed at me. Even into my adult life, I was blamed for everything. And it was also why I liked acting so much. That was my go-to place when I was too young to drink, or when drinking wasn't even a thing for me or a thought. It was where I'd go. It was kind of my pretend land. I could know I was going to get in epic trouble and just put myself in some sort of role that was not the current real reality of the situation. I'm Nikki Lynn Chase. This is my podcast, Adult Chicken, and it's about navigating life's unexpected. These are my stories about navigating life's hurdles and obstacles as a single mom to two special needs kids. I don't know that I knew the difference between pretending or acting, but I would immediately, it was my safe space. It was my go-to to alleviate the anxiety of being in trouble. And I would just take on roles. I would put on whatever wardrobe went with whatever role I was taking on that day. I had a reoccurring role as an Olympic trampolinist. We had a trampoline growing up, and I would go outside and spend just hours, and kind of depending on what I was in trouble for, that was my escape. I'd go outside, play this entire dramatic role, came from a different family, and it was a tumultuous, crazy event. And then I would go through all the hurdles and over all the boundaries, and the success story was that of a Hollywood movie, and I would play every part every day, all day long. And I loved being on stage. I loved being in front of people. I loved a camera in front of me. I remember there wasn't a whole lot of acting opportunities, really. I think I got myself on every possible local commercial. I did a roller skating commercial for the local roller rink, Bossa Nova, and I felt pretty just famous and successful with what I had to work with and what I had done. Get to college, I think I tabled the dream of being an actress for a little bit, but didn't do much. But it still was in the back of my mind. And then once I had kind of moved on, taught school, put my toes in the water of the real world, came back to Colorado, and I was just working retail. I was in the mountains working a retail job. And I remember I was at work one day. And of course, this is back in the day, of course, where newspapers were where you got your current events and you found out what things were happening and what was going to go on in the community. And it turned out David Letterman's Stupid Human Tricks was coming to town. And everybody read it, and everybody looked at me and said, Nikki. I mean, I was kind of known to be that person that would be happy to do anything. Anything that meant I'd have an audience, I'd be on stage, and I never got embarrassed easily. So I was like oh God, it's Nikki. What can you do? What are your tricks? So I kind of thought back, and I thought, I used to practice. There was a big competition at my house with the kids, we'd put a lot of grapes in our mouth, and I was always the winner. I seem to have the most flexible mouth ever. And so I'm like, I'm going to do my grape trick. And I went to the store at lunch break. I bought a bunch of grapes, got back to work, and I practiced with my audience, my fellow retail employees. And I we were all dying laughing. And I'm like, this is it. This is going to be the winner. So a couple of the girls that I worked with and I went to the auditions, and I had my few margaritas, a few margaritas in, and I fill out the paperwork. What is your trick? I do a little warm up. I show them I can almost completely turn my leg around, and then give them the options. I can do this with my leg. I can blow bubbles off my tongue, but I think the real showstopper is going to be my grape trick. And they're like, cool, let's see it. So the auditions were at a dive bar in town, and there were a lot of men in the audience, a lot of men. And I didn't care. Nothing mattered. I was in my element. I sat myself on that stage. I sat down with my bowl of grapes. I'd gotten myself a brand new hat. I think I wore a new sweater. I was ready. And when I get on stage, when I go out, when I do anything, I would just get into my own little element. It didn't matter how much alcohol I had or didn't have. I was a party with myself. I would just get into this zone of me. It was kind of this selfish, safe place of I'd either dance with myself or do whatever with myself. Well, in this particular instance, it was I am talented. I am Nikki. I am talented. I'm great. And I'm going to get on David Letterman's Stupid Human Tricks. And so I bring up the fact that there were a lot of men because it's not the most ladylike trick. It's a very kind of a raunchy. I didn't think of it as dirty. I thought of it as just raw talent. And I sat down, and the crowd went wild. Again, primarily men. I'm up there just going, oh, I'm hearing, Nikki, you're amazing. You're talented. Whoa, you're awesome. You're going to go on David Letterman's Stupid Human Tricks. Really, what they were saying was a lot of inappropriate, crazy comments about what my mouth had the capacity to do. Because what we counted, and I still to this day can't imagine it was right, was 85 grapes. Whether it was or wasn't, it didn't matter. There were way more grapes than the typical person could fit in their mouth. And I won the prize, which was the David Letterman Stupid Human Tricks audition. And there was a huge write-up the next day in the newspaper about me and my amazing talent. And unfortunately, it actually didn't make it on David Letterman's Stupid Human Tricks. We were invited. I brought my friend, and we were invited to go to David Letterman, and we got to sit in the audience. What had happened is somebody had recently been on shoving cheeseburgers in their mouth, and the trick was way too similar to what I could do. So the consolation prize was front row seats, David Letterman, and we got to see a live show. But then shortly after that, the producers of the show called me and said, World's Funniest Videos wants your video, but we can't give them ours. You'll have to refilm it for them, and they'll pay you. They'll be in touch with you. It was kind of disappointing because, of course, the energy wasn't the same. I had to refilm this. And at the time, I guess I had relocated to New York. So I'm in New York, and I don't have my own camera. I have to borrow a camera. I'm stacking it up in my apartment on a bunch of shoe boxes, and I'm having to film it. And it's definitely not the same effect as a dive bar with what felt like a gazillion people in the audience rooting me on. But it did well nonetheless, and it made it onto World's Funniest Videos. Now, not America's Funniest, World's Funniest. And they paid me, I think, $500. And it aired, I didn't win the prize, but it aired on their, I think like a Valentine's edition or something. Again, little, I don't know if it's because of what my mouth was doing or what, but it was what it was. Well, kind of forgotten that I had that amazing talent. Never forgotten, actually. Anybody who knew I had been on national television for doing that, it would be a joke. All of a sudden, I'd be at like a dinner party and grapes would come out and I would perform it sort of privately amongst friends. And it stuck. And I never quite got to be that actress, but that kind of sufficed as far as it got me on TV. So my autobiography wasn't completely wrong. I had made national television. Well, then I've had a few more life experiences and I end up back in Vail and I am 5 months pregnant with Sandler and my phone rings. And I answer it at this time. My cell phones had obviously kind of just come out, but I get this call and it's a network called CMT. I'd never heard of it, Country Music Television. And they asked if this was Nikki, and I said, yes, it is. And they said, hey, we have been looking for you actually for a couple of years, and we found your father. This is in the day of phone books, and they were just about obsolete, but if you could find one person in a phone book, you could find my dad, older and always had a landline. And they said, we found your dad. He gave us your cell number. And here's the deal. We've been looking for you. We know you've got this grape trick, and we're wondering if you would like to come on. We've got this show, and it's called Country Fried Videos. And what they proposed was that they'd pay me, I think it was like $750, which I was always a lot of. I'm thinking, I'm going to make more money off this grape trick. What? This is amazing. So they were going to offer me $750, and they said, but we want to let you know you're going to win. There's a grand prize, and you're going to win the grand prize. You're the winner, and you'll be the winner of that episode, which is $1,000 prize. I'm like, heck yeah. And they said, but we need to, they had old footage, and I don't know what or where it was from, but they had footage of me shoving grapes in my mouth. And then they said they would send their camera guy to my house to film the giving of the grand prize. So I'm like, sign me up. $1,700 for nothing? This is awesome. Now the interesting trick was when the cameraman arrived, I had to explain to him, because I was 5 months pregnant. And if you've listened to past podcasts, you know that it was kind of a tumultuous pregnancy. And I'd kept it under wraps. It wasn't a good pregnancy. It was a scary pregnancy, and there was so much anxiety involved. And I didn't tell people. Certain people I was really close to knew, but I honestly hadn't told my family. I hadn't told anybody sort of outside, maybe the people that knew me best and could kind of recognize the physical changes. But I didn't look very pregnant, and I was kind of hiding it. I was wearing big sweaters, and it was just so scary. And that was exactly the time where I was finding out everything was wonky with my pregnancy, and I also was expecting my second special needs child. So I wasn't airing that out to the universe. So I had asked the camera guy if he could just film me from sort of waist up and not out my pregnancy on national TV. And he said, sure. So he films, and I had never seen the show before. So I didn't realize it was sort of just a trashy redneck edition of like funny videos. And I didn't care. I won $1,000, and they paid me also for the trick. So they let me know that it's going to air, and I'm like, great, again, maybe DVR existed. I don't even remember if it did. I didn't have it, but I had to get ready. I had to be ready to watch the episode when it aired. And I did. And then they sent me a disc in the mail. And I was cool with all of it. The guy honored my wishes. You couldn't really see my stomach. It was kind of apparent that there were some physical changes. But I was like, wait a minute here. They make it sound like I solicited my trick, which was not the case. But honestly, it didn't matter. So the episode airs, and it ends up being one of their most popular episodes. And I mean, I don't want to take credit, but I would be happy to. That trick was very, very, very popular and successful. And my brother lived in another country, and they have the habit where he lived of constantly like repeating shows and re-showing episodes. And a friend of his showed up at his house. Remember, I hadn't told anybody I was really close to that I was pregnant, and the cameraman had honored my wishes of not being filmed, but you could just kind of tell, especially if you knew me well. And some guy, a friend of my brother's, showed up at his house. I'm like, dude, you got to see this chick from Bale shoving grapes in her mouth. And they watched it, and my brother's like, oh my God, that's my sister. And he was livid. He was so just disturbed and disgusted, and I disgraced the family, which I was happy to do, and I really didn't care about that part. But it became evident to everybody who I had not told that I was in fact pregnant. So in a way, I'd been outed for my pregnancy, and that was kind of the end of that part of my acting career. But it was funny. It continued to show and continued to show uh, the episode, not my pregnancy. But then I have Sandler. And that was it was when he was born in an infant. And I think then the fear, again, more so than anything, starts kicking in. And now it's the fear of the unknown with him. And it's also, there was a lot of fear mixed with guilt that created all of my anxiety, or that manifested in anxiety. And of course, there was a lot of guilt attached to what my kids were born with because I was the carrier. And then there was the added guilt of I was bringing them into a volatile, dangerous, and toxic relationship, and an abusive one at that. And I think that was when I took my silly grape trick, I don't think you can call that my acting career, but I took my acting to the next level, and it was time to start acting like everything was okay for the general public, because everyone started to get concerned for my safety, but more importantly for my kids' sake. I wanted to, especially for Bootsy, because she was 4 when Sandler was born, I put on the acting gig of a lifetime for her, and that everything's fine. We don't know if your brother's going to live or die, but we're going to get through this. And also, he was on this 24-hour feeding tube, which would it was this long cord, and it would wrap around his neck at night. And I would be constantly nervous and scared. And of course, the anxiety of, oh my God, what could that do? Obviously I knew what it could do, but I didn't sleep. And that's when enter alcohol, where it became not for the reason of fun. It became not for the reason of sort of forgetting the terrible choices I had made leading up to this point, which was part of the reason I would drink. It was primarily for fun, but also to just numb the fact that the reality was I had made some choices as far as who I'd procreated with and decided to spend what was supposed to be a lifetime with. And I had to numb that shit down. Like, that was not what I wanted to realize. That was not my reality. The acting had kind of worn off, but as far as my safe place, and I kind of turned to alcohol as my safe place. Well, I couldn't sleep. And fortunately, I'd been a very responsible drinker. So when I kind of experimented with alcohol. It was high school, and I was the responsible drinker. I was really small, so it only took me one Coors Extra Gold and a wine cooler. And then everyone was kind of getting into smoking. I couldn't quite get into that, so I'd have a Swisher Sweet, but I wouldn't actually smoke it. I just like the smell of cigars, if you can even call it that, the cheap cigars from 7-Eleven. But I'd keep a little blue suitcase, and I was kind of the keeper of alcohol because I don't know that my mom knew or cared that I had alcohol. She was always so drunk anyway. But I was the responsible keeper of the alcohol, and I could hide everyone's alcohol in high school. And we were all pretty responsible, some time at Vodka Valley, but we drank for fun, or I drank for fun. College, way more responsible than the majority of the people I knew as far as partying went. I partied on Thursday nights. I was at school. I made it to every class, but I enjoyed drinking on Thursday nights. And usually I never had a very good fake ID. And if you didn't have a good fake ID and you couldn't get into the bars on the hill. So typically what a night looked like for me, an alcohol infused night in college, what it looked like for me was I'd go to the hill where all the great bars were I couldn't get into. I'd put on like a polyester suit, some wild shoes that I'd buy at a thrift store, borrow somebody's guitar. I had no musical talent, but that acting thing, or my doing a show, I guess, so to speak. I'd do a show, and I'd get my friends, and that was my audience. Sometimes I'd put a cup out. I literally had no idea how to play a guitar, but I'd pretend I'd just strum and make up songs for the evening. But that was my big wild, those were the majority of my wild nights in Boulder, Colorado at school. And then, of course, like I said, I would drink to alleviate anxiety, but more so just for fun. And then a little bit once I started making the decisions I was making for my future to numb up the reality that I was making those decisions. So Sandler comes along, and I needed something. Again, I'm getting in trouble because I'm in a toxic relationship, so I'm getting blamed for everything their dad is feeling. And I'm getting a lot of, I'm blaming myself. I'm giving myself guilt trips. And I started finding that wine would just be my go-to, my calm down. And at first it was a couple of glasses, and then it was a bottle, and then it was sometimes a bottle and a half to 2 bottles. And then we were on the run. Then I took the 2 kids, and we were just going by survival. And talk about anxiety. I mean, my God, we had no idea where we were. I had no idea where I was taking us. I had no idea what I was doing. I couldn't sleep at night because I had to monitor that feeding tube for Sandler. And so the only time I'd sleep was, a couple hours after drinking my wine, and then I was awake. So mixing in just the anxiety that went with our circumstances, the unknown of the medical stuff with the kids, the unknown of, are we going to survive? Are we going to be, the threats that were coming in, and all of it, it was enough to make me drink, oh God, a keg of Bud Light and 3 bottles of wine. It was crazy anxiety. My life was fueled with anxiety and adrenaline, to be honest with you. And we didn't have a car. So there were 6 years where I could drink responsibly. I wasn't getting in a car, but I could drink just to calm down. But it kind of started wearing off because I think I did start becoming dependent on it. It was what I identified my calm with, and I knew that wasn't healthy, and I certainly didn't want to turn into the person like my mom. My mom had blamed me for alcoholism. She had said, I drink because of you, and I would lightheartedly say, being a parent does make you drink. And I never meant it in the way that she directly was blaming me my entire life for her being an alcoholic. I didn't mean it like that. I did mean that being a parent does require a lot of alcohol or substance or something to just take the edge off. But I started getting concerned because I started realizing that that was the only time I could feel a little bit of relief from my anxiety, from all of my fear, from even the adrenaline. I needed something to take me down. So, fast forward, you know, I had been a good, responsible drinker, but it was starting to become something that I relied on. And about 5 years ago, and we'd gotten to the point where Sandler was having one of his most major surgeries to date at the time, which was craniofacial reconstructive surgery. And that was a very scary one, in that we had to meet with a panel of, gosh, like 7 to 10 specialists just to clear us for pre-op, and it was a situation where they were rebuilding his pharyngeal flap. Sometimes I like to just throw out those medical terms because I feel like it makes me sound really medically smart. Would have never even known what that was, but I knew a lot about it. Every time he had a surgery, I did a lot of homework. And it was a scary one there. It was very, very intense. They were doing a lot of extreme, sort of invasive work to the inside of his craniofacial parts. It's a fancy way of saying he needed his speaking parts rebuilt, basically. And the person who had discovered that was his speech therapist at the time. And she and her husband accompanied me to the hospital when he had this surgery. And it was the first time I had had support. It was the first time anybody had ever spent any time with me at the hospital to go through something like that. And it was scary, and she knew how scary it was, but such a calm, amazing person, such an amazing couple. And they sat with me, and we went to, as I said back when I was a kid, when I was so fearful and anxiety ridden, I'd go into a pretend place or go into my acting world and play a role. Well, our safe space and happy place was, she told me all about their travels to Hawaii. And I'd been to a number of islands growing up. We always went to the Caribbean, but I'd never been to Hawaii. And so I loved visually going there and pretending I was in Hawaii the entire time I was sitting through this extensive, long, scary surgery with Sandler. And at the end of that, he came out. The recovery was supposed to be weeks and weeks. He wasn't supposed to talk. He wasn't supposed to do anything. Of course, 15 minutes after anesthesia wore off, he's talking. We can't shut him up. We can't keep him calm. Once again, we're discharged, and they look at me and basically, good luck. That's not going to go well. He recovered beautifully. He started speaking a lot better. I planned a trip to Hawaii. That was going to be our reward, my reward for going through another surgery, my kids' reward for surviving another surgery with me, and Sandler getting through it successfully. So we went to Hawaii, and in Hawaii, I realized I had this newfound freedom where I wasn't in trouble with people anymore. That was a choice, to be around people who decided it was their job to blame me, or they wanted to put the blame on me. I didn't need to be with those people. I needed to be with my kids, and I needed to be a good mom to my kids. So I kind of started drinking in Hawaii to celebrate that reality and that realization, I guess. And I about drank Hawaii dry. I mean, I was into the tropical drinks. I had a blender because we had this little kitchen, and I just was celebrating. I was celebrating a successful surgery, and I was celebrating my freedom. I'm like, we have come this far, and hell yeah, I don't need all this toxic bullshit. I finally have a support group. I had somebody sit with me for the first time in all of these surgeries. And now I'm in Hawaii with my 2 kids, and we had the best trip ever. And then I caught a glimpse towards the end of the trip. I saw myself, a reflection of myself in the mirror, and I looked like a really tan Humpty Dumpty. And I was mortified. I was like, oh my God, I am physically morphing into my mother, like the ugliest person inside and out. And I saw her look back at me in the mirror, because I had been relying on alcohol, and I'd been drinking so much that it had physically changed me. And I was so disgusted. And I think that's when I really connected the dots that, ooh, I've been bragging about not getting hangovers, but I get them in the form of anxiety. And then my anxiety would be so bad the next day that the only way I could see like a cure or something that would make me feel better was to start drinking again. And then it had just been a vicious cycle. And ultimately, I had ended up looking like fucking Humpty Dumpty. So, all the way home on this flight, and as things are like just sort of exaggerated, one of the kids wet their pants, and we're on this 5 hour flight home from Hawaii. One of the kids wets their pants. The other one spills an entire Coke all over themselves first 5 minutes into the flight. And I'm going, you better figure out a game plan because there's never not going to be this shit going on. You're going to have constant stuff that's going to make you want your Bud Light or your wine or something like to just calm you down. So you've got to figure out what it is to break this habit. And we get home, and I don't think we had probably been home but a day. And I thought back to when, right before the surgery, Sandler and I were looking at my laptop, and I remember there was a disc stuck in the laptop, and I didn't know what it was. And I hit play. We were trying to see some pictures or something, and I hit play on the disc, and it was the grape trick. And I had no idea that it even made it when in the Great Escape when we had left Colorado. I had no idea. I don't even remember packing that, or I have no idea. It must have been in one of the backpacks as a carry-on something. I had the disc, and it happened to be the video of the grape trick. And I'm thinking, awesome, I'm going to share this with my kids. And so Sandler watches it, and he had just this look of terror on his face. He didn't think it was funny at all. In fact, he found it extremely disturbing. And then the look of terror turned into tears. And he just started crying. And he looked at me with the most disappointed gaze I've ever seen. It was the worst look I've ever seen. And he said, Mommy, you could have choked. And he wasn't wrong. I mean, it was a very stupid and dangerous trick. And I thought, that's it. You're going to tell the kids that you're not going to drink anymore, because that's the only thing, that look of disappointment is probably the only thing you never want to see again. I'd been through so much. I'd been blamed for everything. There wasn't a lot that could penetrate like my feelings or hold me accountable. But I remembered thinking that is the look I never want to see on my kid's face. So a couple days after getting back from Hawaii, that was my game plan. And I sat the kids down, and you give kids any leverage to say you're not allowed to do something and make them almost the parent with I don't know, any responsibility or any green light to call you out on something. They tend to take it and run, at least mine do. And I sat them down and we discussed alcohol. And the best part I got out of that conversation was they had never seen me drunk, or at least they had never realized I might have been drunk or even buzzed up. We went through the people we knew that had drinking problems, my mom, their dad, and how it affected people, and that it's not healthy, it's not good. People will drink, it's legal, and people can have fun doing it. I said, but for me, it's not fun anymore, you guys. I don't like how it's making me feel. I don't like how it's making me look. And it's never been a problem, so to speak, but I don't want to do it. So I want to let you guys know I'm making you a promise. And the other thing I'd always made a deal with myself as far as having kids was don't promise things unless you're going to follow through, because there's nothing I hated more than as a kid, all the empty promises that were made to me. And I forgot very few of them. So that wasn't going to be how I parented. And I always do my best to honor each and every promise I make to my kids. I don't promise things lightly. So I said, here's the deal. I'm going to start only drinking if we're out and we're, social with other people. And that was fair. They seemed to get that. I think they were just holding on to the idea that they were going to get to tell me I wasn't allowed to do something if the opportunity presented itself. And then I said to myself after going several weeks, I thought, wait a minute, I'm never social. Like, I'm always literally just with my kids. And I don't need drinking to hang out with my kids. I mean, yes, sometimes when everything goes to shit in a handbasket or we're spilling everything, yes, that's my go-to, but find something else. Get in the car, go somewhere, do something. Get on a bike, go for a run, do something. Alternatives. I thought, okay, well, you guys, holidays. Here's the deal. Just holidays. Well, Thanksgiving came and went. I didn't need to drink for that. It was the three of us. We did our sort of Thanksgiving show, had our dinner, did our show, did what we like to do, and I don't probably perform some turkey dance, who knows, on to Christmas. And I thought, why would you open Pandora's box and start drinking now? Like, that's a terrible idea. Christmas, any break where the kids were home from school was difficult because all of a sudden there's no routine and there's no, everything would just be upside down, and it was, God, just survive the holidays. And I thought, why would you open Pandora's box and start drinking over a Christmas holiday? Well, boom, then we're into 2018, and that's when my mom died. That's when more things happened than I could ever imagine. It was kind of my 2020, and it was every day something crazy would happen. And I think, thank God I'm not drinking, because this year literally would have required a lethal amount of alcohol. And I just never went back to it. And the funny thing is, there's never been a desire or, an urge to have a beverage. And so many moms that I knew started coming to me asking me what the magic recipe was, like to quit drinking. Because in a lot of moms' defenses, there's a reason the wine industry does so well. Kids will drive you to drink. And again, my mom doesn't get the okay because I realized it, because she blamed me in an evil way. Most of the moms I know that need a lot to drink, I will spend a few moments with their children and go, get the wine. Don't forget the bottle, get the box, get anything, something that you have quick access to. But everyone started thinking I had the magic recipe for quitting. And I guess I did, but it came with a hefty price. And it came with my two kids staring at me, checking in on me, making sure. And I thought, well, it's a big trade-off. I don't think you want my trade-off. I'd say if it's if it's up to you, the investment of wine might be okay. For me, it had stopped. It had stopped working. It had stopped doing the trick. And my kids turned out to be my AA, if you will. They were my little sponsors, and they were not going to let me go. And it was my way of finally practicing what I preach, I guess. I constantly tell my kids, carpe diem, live in the moment, seize the moment. And it has allowed me to go through the last 5 years very present and feeling everything, and finding new and healthy outlets as a way to, I guess, cope. And I am eternally grateful for the fact that they do make such good accountability coaches, and it just made it easy, honestly, to quit drinking and not revisit that. And I think it's a healthy way, if I'm going to tell them never to do it and not to do it, for them to have that parent that doesn't do it. And I think few and far between as parents, we actually practice what we preach and live life the way we want our kids to live it. And fortunately, by deleting that particular that vice, I guess, in my case, by deleting that in the toxic people, it's a way to move closer to showing them how I want them to live their life. Today's special edition is a little snippet I recorded with my phone when I discovered the DVD of Country Fried videos in my laptop. The quality of this video, along with the quality of my performance and the show itself, are not amazing or awesome, but please enjoy as you get to see my big television debut as Grape Girl.
Everybody knows most charm schools are about which fork to use or balancing books on your head. But if you're looking for a place to focus on real social graces, come on down to Uncle Bill's Charm School. We'll charm you up good. A truly charming woman knows the importance of good table manners. Like, always keep your dinner companion entertained by cramming your mouth full of grapes.
I discovered I had a very large mouth early in life.
This was sent in by Nikki Chase of Vail, Colorado, one of our most charming graduates. What's the most charming thing about Nikki? With a mouthful of grapes, she can't complain, nag, or trash your friends.
I can get my fist in my mouth, but grapes are a little easier, a little smoother, so that's why I prefer to do grapes over my fist or anything else. That could sound bad, couldn't it? Excuse me, it's not very ladylike, but that is my trick.
I beg to differ, Nikki. That was completely ladylike.
Please tune in next week for my episode about kids, my love and disdain for children. Also, like, follow, share, and subscribe. You can find me at adultchicken.com. Make sure you get the .com in there. Or you can find me on Instagram, adult_chicken, TikTok, adult_chicken, as well as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Adult Chicken, and YouTube, Adult Chicken.